If you own a small business and you have people working for you, at some point, you're going to need to sit down with them and have a formal performance conversation when someone's repeatedly not doing what you need them to do or not doing it how you need them to do it. And maybe you're also in HR and you've been asked to help with this for the first time by your client. Well, here, in either case, is what you need to know about that conversation. It's the one that so many people dread. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams. I'm an HR consultant to small and medium businesses as well as a YouTuber. If you're contemplating one of these difficult conversations and want a thought partner in the process, my contact information is in the show notes. But on to the topic. Before the conversation, there's two things you need to have prepared. The first is your evidence. The more specific, the better. Evidence sounds really formal, but it's just things like the emails, the situations, the notes, documentation that illustrate the problem you're trying to get them to understand. So, general impressions are not going to be helpful, and it causes people to argue because it's too vague. Vagueness is also a problem with praise, but we're not going to talk about that today. Second, you need to be clear about what you're actually going to say, not word for word, not at all, but you need to know what the message is that they're going to need to hear in the end. Too many times you hear about conversations like, well, I went in and I talked to them, but clearly the employee did not hear what it was that the manager was trying to communicate. And it's because they go in, the manager goes in, they're nervous. They don't want to alienate the employee and water down the message so much that the employee thinks, it's mostly fine. Yeah, there's a thing I need to tweak. If you've gotten to a performance conversation and you're kind of, you're a little bit stressed about it, it's clear at that point that you need to be clear. You don't need to be cruel, you need to be clear. Now, we'll get into this because this clarity really is the hardest part. You are going to be tempted to let them say nice things and let them off the hook. So before we talk about running the meeting, we need to have a quick discussion about how to schedule it. Now, you should be having one-on-ones with your employees. If you aren't, that's a separate conversation. But hopefully, your next one-on-one with that individual isn't too far away and not so far that the conversation would be dated. Now, if you don't have a planned one-on-one, you're going to need to get them into your private space with you when you know that you both have enough time. You don't need to tell the employee what it's about in advance. And if they want to know, you just don't have that discussion out in the open. Take them to the room and then have the conversation you need to have. Now we're going to actually talk about the meeting, and this is the hard part. So you need to start by being clear about why you're there. Say something like, I want to talk to you about something that's really important. It's a performance conversation, and they will know at that point. And then you get into it. You present the things you've observed. You present the evidence you have related to their performance. So it could be something like, in the last 6 weeks, you've been late with some product to client, and I've had to follow up every time. You have to say something like that rather than, your work has been slipping lately. That is too vague. Then they're obviously going to follow up with, slipping. What do you mean? I do everything. And then they'll start making your case, and it's already getting derailed. So you've got to focus on those specific incidents. So that was an example of something that's quite objective. There's a lot of things that you'll observe that aren't nearly so objective, but you can still have examples of when something went off the rails. Let's take, for example, a value. Let's say you have a value in your organization around respect, and you overheard an employee gossiping about Daryl. Daryl's relationship was ending and he wasn't being kind. You can approach the employee and say, we have a value here of respect, and talking about Daryl and his relationship, and I know it's a difficult situation, but it goes against our values. At this point, you're explaining the impact. How does that gossiping in this situation affect the business or the team? Respect is a foundation for how you work, presumably, it goes a long way to creating a good team, and you would tell the employees something like that. But once you have said your piece, your observations, and the trouble you have with whatever that behavior is, the impact on the team, then you need to give them a chance to talk. Two questions I'd like to ask at this point are: one, is there anything going on with you personally that's getting in the way of your performance that we could help with? Sometimes you'll be surprised. Maybe they do have personal stuff going on in their own life, and it's a big relief to them to get it out. The second question is that I like to ask is, what happened here from your perspective? The reason we have to engage, this just can't be a telling, where it's like one way communication, thou shalt change, is because the individual is far more likely to change if they're engaged in the process of it. Now, this does not mean that you as a leader cannot set expectations of the individual. While you can be prepared to hear them out and you can discuss plans with them, at the end, you still need to let them know that that kind of behavior is unexpected and you are unacceptable, and you expect it to change. So something that employers are really tempted to skip at this stage of the conversation, and they'll do it at the spur of a moment, is they're going to skip the consequences. Now, if this is the first conversation you've had about the behavior and it's not super serious, go ahead, skip the consequences. But if it's the second time, the third time that you've had conversation and you're frustrated, you need to mention circumstances. Say something like, it's the dreaded sentence, but say something like, further problems may result in discipline up to and including termination. This seems harsh, but is it not actually the truth? Like, if you're getting frustrated with this individual, like, at some point you're considering consequences, and it is the kind thing to do to let the employee know just how serious it is. If you don't, you're not doing them a service, and helping them adjust their behavior. And also, there's a financial reason to do it. It can get very expensive if you're just trying to cut them loose without ever having told them that there was an issue at all. Now we need to discuss what to say and what not to say. And it's going to sound a little bit like relationship advice. And it is a relationship, right? It just, these bits of advice apply to any relationship. So when you're discussing the performance, don't talk in generalizations. And I guess this is a little bit of a review. Don't say things like you never and you always. Those things are almost never accurate, and they put someone on the defensive. Try not to make it personal. It is personal, but don't, make a sweeping generalization about their awful behavior without also saying something specific. And the other thing not to do, which I have already probably belabored, is don't err in favor of being so nice that you're not clear. A lot of managers are so uncomfortable with the conversation that they don't say what needs to be said clearly, and the employee leaves still clueless. Things are not okay, and that's why you're having the meeting. Make sure you've said the hard thing clearly so the employee understands. Then if they push back or get defensive, that's normal. You can say something like, I hear you and I want to understand your perspective and work with you on this. And I also need to be clear that this situation needs to be resolved. Ultimately, in these conversations, you're not there to argue. You are there to be understood and to resolve the problem. It's also not uncommon for people to get emotional, so just give them a moment. I don't know if you have Kleenex, offer Kleenex. You can say some things like, take your time, but continue. Do not let the emotions derail you. And then at the end, make sure you summarize, as I said. You should also follow up in writing. Uh, you can sometimes ask the employee to send you an email saying, I want you to send me an email summarizing what we agreed to in this meeting. And once you've read through, clarify if you need to. You can also, of course, send that email yourself. And all of this becomes a paper trail as to what actually happened. So that's the overview. I know these conversations are hard. Most people avoid them longer than they should. And then they're at that point harder to solve because the problem's bigger. The best thing you can do is be honest, be specific, do it early, and respect the individual enough to share the information they need to improve. Now, if you're having trouble navigating a conversation like this right at the moment and you want someone to think it through with, please reach out. My contact information is in the show notes. That first conversation is free. I also did an episode on what happens when someone complains because they're being performance managed. So they'll maybe file a human rights claim or bullying and harassment, something like that. And I did an episode on how to handle that. A link is in my list of episodes or right here. Thanks for watching, and we're going to see you next time.